In the quiet embrace of dawn, the fields lay shrouded in an eerie stillness, but something was amiss. Witnesses, still trembling from the night before, gathered at the edge of the crop circle, their eyes widening in disbelief as they beheld a transformation that defied explanation. What had appeared as a simple formation now bore intricate lines and folds, as if an unseen hand had traced a more complex design overnight. They whispered among themselves, their voices trembling with a mixture of fear and curiosity. How could it change? What force could alter the very fabric of the earth without leaving a trace? A chill ran down their spines as they recalled the shadows that flitted across the circle, figures that moved without a source, an unsettling reminder that they were not alone in this desolate expanse. As the sun rose higher, illuminating the bizarre patterns, a question loomed over the field. What secrets lay hidden within the freshly etched design? The air crackled with tension, a silent promise that the truth would reveal itself. But at what cost? In the quiet embrace of dawn, the fields lay shrouded in an eerie stillness. A silence so profound, it felt as though the world itself held its breath. The golden hues of the sun bled into the horizon, casting long shadows that danced across the earth. Yet the beauty of the morning was starkly juxtaposed by an undercurrent of dread that hung heavy in the air. The crop circle, which had appeared with the startling abruptness of a whispered secret, loomed at the center of it all. What was once a simple formation, a series of perfect circles and lines, had transformed overnight into something intricate and bewildering. Witnesses gathered at the edge of the field, their faces pale and drawn, eyes wide with disbelief. The initial shock of the circle had morphed into a gnawing fear as they took in the details of the new design. It was as if the earth had been rewritten under the cloak of darkness, with new lines branching off from the original circles, weaving a tapestry of complexity that defied reason. The air around them felt charged, as though the very atoms trembled in anticipation of something yet to come. "I swear it was different last night," murmured Mary, a local farmer whose weathered hands had tilled these very fields for decades. Her voice trembled as if each word was a fragile thread, barely holding together her composure. "It was just circles. Simple. Now look at it." She gestured wildly, her eyes darting over the patterns that seemed to shift and shimmer under the morning light. "Mary, calm down," said Jack, a farmer who had lived in the area longer than most. His voice was steady, but the slight tremor in his hands betrayed him. "We need to think this through. You know how rumors spread in this town. Maybe it's just a prank." "A prank?" Mary scoffed, her brow furrowing. "You call this a prank? Look at the size of those circles. What kind of person has the time or the means to do this overnight? And why would they?" Her voice rose, echoing off the distant hills, a challenge thrown into the fragile morning air. The others nodded, their whispers rising like a mist, swirling around them. How could it change? Mark, a skeptical neighbor, asked, his brow furrowing as he squinted against the sun. What could possibly do this without a trace? He stepped closer, the crunch of gravel beneath his boots punctuating the stillness, each step echoing the uncertainty that gripped their hearts. As they peered deeper into the formation, a chill ran down their spines. "I can't shake the feeling that we're not alone," Sarah whispered, her voice quivering. There was something in the air last night. Something watching us. The statement hung heavy, the group exchanging glances that spoke volumes. "You're just imagining things," Mark retorted, though his eyes darted nervously. Maybe it was just the wind or a trick of the light. But even as he spoke, he wrung his hands, betraying his own unease. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, mingling with the remnants of the night, an almost metallic tang that whispered of something otherworldly. The breeze, which had once been a gentle caress, now carried a weight of foreboding, rustling the leaves and sending the hairs on their arms standing on end. Something was out of place, and it was not merely the crop circle. It was the very essence of the land itself, altered in ways they dared not comprehend. As the group stood in horrified fascination, a distant rumble broke through the silence. It was faint at first, a low vibration that resonated through the ground, sending shivers coursing up their legs. The sound grew louder, a haunting melody that seemed to echo from the circle itself. It was not a song of nature, but rather a strange, pulsating rhythm that felt alive, throbbing like the heartbeat of the earth. "Do you hear that?" whispered Sarah, her voice barely above a breath. The others nodded, the fear palpable in the air. They were no longer just witnesses to a bizarre phenomenon. They were participants in a mystery that threatened to unravel their understanding of reality. What if it's a warning? Mary's eyes widened, her words almost a prayer. What if it's trying to tell us something? "I don't want to find out," Mark said, shaking his head. "We should just leave. This is too much." But even as he spoke, he took a step closer to the circle, drawn in by a magnetic pull that he couldn't name. The sun climbed higher, and with it, the shadows in the field grew longer, stretching towards the witnesses with an almost palpable intent. "We need to stick together," Jack said, his voice low and steady, but even he felt the unease creeping in. "Let's not lose sight of each other." "What secrets lay hidden within the freshly etched design?" Mary murmured, her eyes scanning the intricate patterns. "What force has wrought such a transformation?" Questions swirled in their minds, each one heavier than the last. Their hearts raced, and with every passing moment, the sense of danger deepened, wrapping around them like a tightening noose. In that moment of shared trepidation, they felt an unspoken bond form among them, a connection forged in the crucible of fear and curiosity. Yet, beneath that connection lay an unsettling truth. Whatever had altered the circle, whatever had watched them from the shadows, was still out there, lingering just beyond the veil of understanding. The tension in the air crackled like static electricity, a warning that the truth would reveal itself. But at what cost? And as they stood there, suspended in uncertainty, the fields whispered their secrets, waiting for the right moment to unfurl the mystery that lay just beyond their grasp. The day was only beginning, but the weight of the night still clung to them, a reminder that the shadows could return, and with them, the fear of what lay hidden beneath the surface of their reality. The air was thick with tension as the sun ascended, casting its golden rays across the vast expanse of the field. Yet, the warmth it promised felt distant and hollow, a mere illusion against the backdrop of the night's haunting remnants. The witnesses stood at the edge of an otherworldly transformation, their senses heightened, each sound amplified in the stillness. A gentle breeze stirred the tall grasses, whispering secrets only the earth could understand. But the comfort of nature was eclipsed by the palpable dread that gripped their hearts. Every rustle of the leaves seemed to echo the unspoken fears that churned in their minds. The shadows of the barn loomed nearby, its weathered wood a silent guardian to the secrets of the night. The familiar sounds of the countryside, distant calls of birds, the soft rustling of small animals, had been replaced by an unsettling silence that pressed against their eardrums, urging them to listen more closely. It was as if the world had paused, holding its breath in anticipation of what was to come. Mary felt a shiver dance down her spine, the chill not born from the cool morning air, but from an instinctive awareness that something was not right. The soil beneath her feet felt alive, pulsating with an energy that was foreign, yet intoxicating. The vibrations seemed to hum in harmony with her heartbeat, a rhythmic reminder of their shared humanity against the vast, uncaring cosmos. She glanced at Mark, who stood rigid, his eyes darting across the field as if expecting something to emerge from the depths of the earth. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, his voice barely above a breath. The others leaned in closer, the intimacy of their shared fear binding them together, even as it drove them apart. A low, resonant hum vibrated through the ground, a sound that was neither mechanical nor organic, but something altogether different, an echo of a presence that felt both ancient and alien. It reverberated through their bones, a haunting lullaby that beckoned them closer to the heart of the mystery. "Maybe it's a warning," Mary repeated, her voice trembling with the weight of her own thoughts. "Maybe it's trying to tell us something." But what could that something be? The notion of a message sent from beyond their understanding sent a wave of unease crashing over them. What if it was a warning of a danger yet unknown? The thought hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. As they stood there, the field felt like a living entity, breathing in tandem with their fear. The geometric patterns etched into the earth seemed to pulse with a life of their own, their intricate designs suggesting an intelligence far beyond mere chance. Each line, each curve, appeared to shift subtly under the scrutiny of their gaze, as if the very fabric of reality was bending to reveal something hidden. They could feel it in the air, a tension that sliced through the silence, leaving a lingering taste of iron on their tongues. Mark took a hesitant step forward, the magnetic pull of the circle undeniable. "It's just a pattern," he murmured, but the tremor in his voice betrayed his uncertainty. With each step, the soft earth crunched beneath his feet, a sound that broke the stillness and left an echoing void in its wake. The others followed, their movements cautious, weighed down by the gravity of the moment. With every inch they covered, the air thickened, the world narrowing to the space between them and the unknown. Just then, a low growl emanated from the shadows of the barn, sending a jolt of fear coursing through them. The animals, usually a source of comfort, were agitated, their senses keen to the disturbance that hung in the air. The cattle bellowed, their calls laced with anxiety, as if they too were aware of the unseen presence that loomed just beyond their perception. Jack turned to the others, his eyes wide. "We should go back. It's not safe here." But his voice, though steady, carried an undercurrent of dread. Mary felt the urge to retreat, yet the pull of curiosity was strong, a tethering force that kept her rooted in place. "What if we're meant to understand this?" she said, her voice steadying as she faced the circle once more. "What if there's something we need to learn?" Her words hung in the air, the possibility of knowledge both enticing and terrifying. As they stood in the presence of the mysterious formation, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting elongated shadows that danced around them. The field, once a familiar landscape, now felt like a threshold to another world, each blade of grass a sentinel guarding ancient secrets. The atmosphere thickened, the air electric with the promise of revelation, yet haunted by the specter of fear. In that fleeting moment they sensed it, an awareness, a knowing that pierced through the veil of reality. The sensation of being observed enveloped them, a chilling reminder that whatever had caused the transformation in the field was not merely a figment of their imagination. It was real, and it was watching. The tension coiled tighter, each second stretching out into eternity as they stood on the precipice of discovery, caught between the world they knew and the unfathomable depths of the mystery that awaited them. And as they lingered, frozen between fear and fascination, the fields whispered once more, a promise, a warning, or perhaps a call to embrace the unknown. For in that moment, they were not merely witnesses. They were entwined in a cosmic tapestry, a story woven with threads of dread and wonder that spanned beyond the horizon of their understanding. The night descended like an inky shroud, enveloping the landscape in a blanket of darkness that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. The last remnants of sunlight faded, surrendering the field to the shadows that crept along the ground, wrapping around the curious group like a cold embrace. As they stood there, the air thickened, laden with a weight that pressed against their chests, a silent warning that something was profoundly amiss. The wind shifted, carrying with it an unsettling chill that whispered secrets through the rustling leaves of distant trees. It felt as though the very fabric of reality was fraying at the edges, each gust echoing with a strange resonance that sent shivers down their spines. Mary could hear it, an elusive sound, almost like a soft humming, yet too rhythmic to belong to nature. It was a vibration that seemed to originate from the ground beneath their feet, a subtle thrumming that matched the irregular beat of her heart. "Did you hear that?" whispered Jack, his voice barely above a breath, as if afraid that speaking too loudly would shatter the fragile veil of the moment. The others nodded, their expressions tense, eyes darting toward the surrounding darkness. The cattle, normally a reassuring presence, now stood huddled together, their eyes reflecting the faint light of the stars like two pools of fear. They shifted nervously, their low moose punctuating the stillness, a desperate chorus echoing the unease that gripped the air. Mary felt an urge to step forward, to delve deeper into the mystery that hung before them like a suspended breath. It was as if the formation in the field called to her, inviting her to uncover its secrets. Yet the instinct to flee nagged at her, a primal warning from deep within that urged caution. The juxtaposition of fear and fascination coiled tightly in her chest, a serpent of emotion that threatened to constrict her very breath. "Let's not linger," Jack insisted, his voice rising above the cacophony of unease. "We should—" But before he could finish, a sudden flash of light erupted from the heart of the formation. It was not the blinding brilliance of a star, but rather a soft, pulsating glow that surged and receded like the tide. The light painted the field in hues of silver and azure, casting an ethereal glow over the landscape. It illuminated the geometric patterns that spiraled across the earth, each line and curve sharp against the soft earth, impossibly precise and beautiful. The sight ensnared their senses, drawing them closer despite the instinct to retreat. The air vibrated with a strange energy, a hum that resonated in their bones, stirring something deep within them, a primal connection to the unknown. Mary felt her heart race, not with fear alone, but with a burgeoning sense of purpose. "What if it's trying to show us something?" she breathed, her voice trembling with a mix of awe and trepidation. Suddenly, the pulsating light dimmed, and with it came an oppressive silence that smothered the sounds of the night. The world around them seemed to hold its breath, as if nature itself was pausing to witness the unfolding mystery. In that silence, they could hear the subtle shift of the earth beneath them, the soft crackle of energy that thrummed through the air like a heartbeat, steady and relentless. It was then that they felt it, an inexplicable presence, an awareness that transcended the boundaries of their understanding. The cattle's agitation grew, their low bellows morphing into frantic cries, echoing against the stillness. It was a sound that resonated with a deep-seated fear, reverberating through the night and amplifying the tension that held the group captive. Mary turned to the others, her eyes wide with a mix of wonder and dread. "We need to stay calm," she urged, but her own voice quavered, betraying her uncertainty. Then, as abruptly as it had begun, the light flickered back to life, brighter this time, illuminating the entire field with an otherworldly glow. The geometric patterns danced in the brilliance, shifting and swirling as if alive, weaving an intricate tapestry of symbols that threatened to decode the very essence of their reality. It was mesmerizing yet terrifying, a kaleidoscope of possibilities that extended beyond the limits of their comprehension. "Look!" Jack shouted, his voice a raw edge of panic. "Something is moving!" They all turned, their breath hitching as they strained to glimpse the source of his alarm. The grass seemed to shift, undulating in a way that defied explanation, as if a hidden force was at play just below the surface. The tension surged, an electric charge that filled the air, igniting their senses with a primal instinct to flee or fight. Yet they stood frozen, transfixed by the unfolding enigma that lay before them. The pulsating light flickered again, casting eerie shadows that danced across their faces, reflecting their wide-eyed astonishment and dawning fear. It was a moment suspended in time, a breath held in collective anticipation of what might come next. The formation glowed brighter, and Mary could feel the hum in her bones intensify, a siren call beckoning her to step closer, to unravel the mystery that lay just beyond their grasp. But even as the urge to move pulled at her, the realization settled in. Whatever was happening was not merely an event, it was a reckoning, a confrontation with something far beyond their understanding. The sensation of being watched grew heavier, almost suffocating, as if the very fabric of the universe was turning its gaze upon them. And in that moment of cosmic awareness, they were no longer mere observers. They were participants in a story far greater than themselves, woven into the very tapestry of the unknown that stretched across the cosmos. As the last rays of light flickered and faded, leaving only the echo of the pulsating hum behind, they stood on the brink of revelation, suspended between the allure of knowledge and the primal fear of the dark. The night whispered secrets that only the brave would dare to uncover. And in that pregnant silence, they knew they were irrevocably changed, marked by the mystery that awaited them in the shadows. The night thickened around them, an oppressive cloak of darkness that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the strange light that had captivated their senses. Jack's shout hung in the air, a remnant of panic that echoed in the silence that followed. The world around them felt alive, an organism breathing through the rustling grass and the whispering wind that snaked its way through the fields, carrying with it a sense of foreboding. As the formation glimmered, the light transformed the landscape into a surreal tableau. The long shadows cast by the barn, the fence and the gnarled trees twisted into grotesque shapes, reminiscent of forgotten nightmares. The grass shimmered like emeralds under the otherworldly glow, each blade trembling slightly as if aware of the inexplicable phenomenon unfolding nearby. Mary's heart raced, a drumbeat of fear and curiosity that thrummed through her veins. She could feel a vibration deep within her chest, a resonance that seemed to echo the pulse of the light. It was as if the ground beneath her feet was alive, thrumming with energy, and the air was thick with an electric charge that danced across her skin. Every instinct screamed at her to turn and run, yet her feet felt rooted to the spot, drawn in by the magnetism of the unknown. "Do you hear that?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely above a breath, eyes wide and glistening with a strange mixture of terror and fascination. The air thickened with anticipation, and an unexplainable hum filled the space around them, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. It was not just a noise, but a tangible presence, vibrating through their bones, urging them to listen, to understand. Jack squinted into the darkness, trying to discern the source of the movement he had spotted. It's like something is shifting under the ground," he murmured, his voice trembling. The grass continued to undulate, rippling as though a creature of unimaginable size was writhing beneath the surface. The sensation of being watched grew heavier, and the hairs on the back of Mary's neck stood on end. It felt as if the universe had turned its attention toward them, evaluating, judging. The light flickered again, momentarily illuminating the field in a blinding radiance before plunging them back into shadow. It was mesmerizing, hypnotic, and terrifying all at once. The darkness felt palpable, a living entity that pressed in around them, and with every flicker, the air grew thicker, charged with an energy that was both alluring and deadly. "Let's get out of here," Daniel finally said, his voice shaking but resolute. Yet even as he spoke, his eyes remained glued to the pulsating glow. The desire to flee clashed with the overwhelming need to understand. What was this phenomenon? What lay hidden in the dark, just out of sight? They were caught in a web of intrigue woven with threads of fear and wonder, and the more they stared, the more the formation drew them in. Suddenly, a metallic sound sliced through the tension, sharp and jarring. It resonated like a bell tolling in the stillness, causing them all to jump. The sound was foreign, a stark contrast to the natural symphony of crickets and rustling leaves that usually filled the night. It was rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat, and it sent a shiver down Mary's spine. The light responded, pulsating in time with the unsettling sound, and she felt an inexplicable pull towards it. A mix of dread and irresistible curiosity. "Did you hear that?" Jack exclaimed, his voice rising in pitch, eyes darting around as if expecting something to leap from the shadows. The group exchanged frantic glances, each of them frozen between the primal instincts of fight or flight. The grass continued to ripple, the glow intensified, and the connection between the sound and the light became undeniable. "It's not just in our heads," Sarah gasped, her breath quickening as she stepped closer, entranced. "There's something happening here." And then, just as suddenly as it had intensified, the light dimmed, plunging them into darkness. The air felt charged with expectation, a moment suspended in time. Each of them stood poised on the brink of a revelation they could hardly fathom. The world around them faded, leaving only the pulsating hum that enveloped them like a shroud. A soft rustle broke the silence, drawing their attention back to the field. Something was moving again, but this time it was closer, just beyond the edge of perception, hidden in the shadows. The sensation of being watched had escalated, transforming into a palpable weight that pressed against their chests. They could feel it, the pull of an otherworldly presence, as if the very essence of the night was alive and observing their every move. "Should we go?" Daniel whispered, his voice barely above a whisper, the words thick with trepidation. Yet even in his fear, he stood there, unwilling to turn his back on the enigma unfolding before them. The night was thick with an energy that felt both divine and sinister, and each second stretched into an eternity as they awaited whatever revelation lurked just beyond their sight. As they stood, breathless and still, the grass shuddered again, and the air shimmered with unexplainable tension. Something extraordinary was about to happen, and they were at the very edge of it, teetering on the precipice of understanding, fear, and the unknown, a moment that would irrevocably change the course of their lives. The night hung heavy around them, a palpable shroud woven from the threads of darkness and uncertainty. The air was thick, charged with an electricity that seemed to pulse in time with their racing hearts. Jack, Sarah, Daniel, and Emily stood in a tight circle, their breaths shallow and rapid, the weight of the unseen pressing down upon them like a leaden blanket. The tension was almost tangible, a living thing that coiled around them, urging them to either flee or stand their ground. "Did you hear that?" Jack whispered again, straining to catch the faintest hint of sound that drifted through the field. It was an unnatural stillness, the kind that envelops a place just before a storm, when nature holds its breath in anticipation. Each blade of grass seemed to hold its ground, quivering slightly at the edges as if alive, responding to a rhythm only it could understand. The distant hoot of an owl punctuated the silence, a reminder of the familiar world beyond this hushed expanse, but it felt woefully inadequate against the backdrop of their mounting dread. Sarah took a hesitant step forward, her eyes wide as they scanned the darkened field, searching for something, anything, that would make sense of the chaos swirling in her mind. The glow that had flickered and danced moments before was now an echo, a memory that lingered in the corners of their thoughts. It was as if the light had left behind an imprint on the night, a reminder of what had been and what might still be. "There's something out there," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the delicate veil of the unknown. Daniel's gaze shifted nervously toward the tree line that bordered the field, where shadows lay thick and impenetrable. What if it's just our minds playing tricks on us? A trick of the light, or maybe even... He hesitated, the words hanging in the air like a fragile thread. An animal? The skepticism in his voice was undercut by the tremor that betrayed his own fear. Despite his attempt to rationalize the events, he too felt the pull of something inexplicable. The wind picked up slightly, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and wildflowers, mingled with an underlying metallic tang that sent shivers racing down their spines. It was unsettling, like breathing in the remnants of a storm that had yet to break. Emily, who had been silent, suddenly inhaled sharply, her eyes narrowing as she felt the first real wave of unease wash over her. "I don't like this," she said, her voice tinged with a note of panic. "Something is wrong. We should leave." But none of them moved. They were rooted to the spot, caught in a web of curiosity and fear that held them captive. The grass continued to sway in a rhythm that felt almost orchestrated, as if the earth itself was responding to a melody only it could hear. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the gentle rustling ceased. An oppressive silence fell over the field, swallowing every sound, until all that remained was the echo of their own heartbeats. And then it came, a low, throbbing hum that resonated through the ground, vibrating beneath their feet and up into their bones. It was a sound that felt ancient and primal, like the very heartbeat of the earth, thrumming with an energy that was at once terrifying and intoxicating. Jack felt it pulse in his chest, a rhythmic echo that matched the apprehensive fluttering of his heart. The hum grew louder, enveloping them in its embrace, and with it came an unshakable sense of being watched, a feeling that they were not alone in this vast expanse of darkness. "What is that?" Sarah gasped, her voice trembling as she tried to locate the source of the sound. The air crackled with tension, and the hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. The sensation of being observed intensified, a weighty pressure that pressed against her from all sides. It was as if something unseen had turned its gaze upon them, scrutinizing their every move, waiting for the moment they would falter. Without warning, a flash of light erupted in the corner of her vision, momentarily illuminating the field in a blinding brilliance. Each of them squinted against the glare, their eyes wide with disbelief. The light danced and flickered, casting long shadows that twisted and stretched across the ground, like fingers reaching out for them. It was mesmerizing and horrifying all at once, the kind of beauty that made the heart race and the stomach churn. "Look," Daniel shouted, pointing into the depths of the field. "Over there." But as they turned to follow his gaze, the light vanished as quickly as it had appeared, plunging them back into darkness. The hum faded, leaving behind only a deafening silence that felt heavy with implications. They stood frozen, their minds racing with questions that had no answers, each of them acutely aware that they were not alone. "Do you think we should—" Emily began, her voice faltering as she glanced back toward the tree line. But the words faded as the air around them began to vibrate once more. A low frequency that seemed to resonate from the very ground beneath their feet. It was a sound that felt alive, almost sentient, and it sent a chill racing down their spines. "I don't know," Jack replied, his voice shaking as he fought to keep his composure. "But I can't shake the feeling that whatever is out there is trying to communicate with us." The idea was both thrilling and terrifying, the prospect of an unknown intelligence lurking just beyond their perception. As the grass began to ripple again, the group felt an inexplicable urge to move closer to the source of the sound, a magnetic pull that defied their better judgment. They exchanged glances filled with a mix of terror and intrigue, each silently weighing the risks of stepping deeper into the unknown. But the allure of the mystery was too strong, and they felt themselves drawn toward the heart of the field, toward whatever awaited them in the shadows. The night had transformed into a living tapestry of fear and fascination, a stage set for an encounter that would defy explanation and challenge their understanding of the world. As they moved forward, the sensation of being watched remained, a constant reminder that they were not just observers in this unfolding story, but players in a cosmic drama that blurred the lines between reality and the inexplicable. In that moment, they knew they were teetering on the edge of something profound, an encounter that would reverberate through their lives long after the night had passed. They stepped into the field, the tall grass whispering against their legs like 1,000 tiny voices warning them to turn back. The air was thick with a metallic taste, a tang that clung to the back of their throats and filled their nostrils with the scent of something otherworldly. With each step, the low hum intensified, resonating through their bodies, an unseen force pulling them deeper into the heart of the darkness. The moon hung high above, casting an eerie glow that illuminated patches of the field, yet the shadows loomed deeper and darker, as if they were alive, shifting and breathing with a rhythm all their own. Emily felt a prickling at the nape of her neck, the sensation of unseen eyes tracking her every movement. She turned slightly, half expecting to find someone or something lurking just beyond the edge of the light. But the tree line remained still, an impenetrable wall of darkness. Jack, his heart racing, broke the silence that had settled among them. "Do you hear that?" he whispered, his voice barely above a breath. The others strained their ears, and for a moment the hum faded, replaced by a soft, almost melodic sound that seemed to rise and fall like a distant lullaby. It was beautiful yet haunting, and it stirred something deep within them, a primal instinct that urged them to flee, while simultaneously demanding their attention. As they ventured further, the ground beneath their feet began to shift subtly, the grass bending as if bowing to an unseen presence. The air vibrated again, this time more intensely, sending ripples through the fabric of reality around them. It felt as though the very earth was alive, pulsating with energy, a heartbeat that matched the racing tempo of their own. The sensation was intoxicating, yet terrifying, an invitation to explore the unknown that lay just beyond their reach. Suddenly, a flash of light erupted in the distance, illuminating the field in a blinding brilliance that momentarily erased the shadows. It was a stark contrast to the muted tones of the night, and for a heartbeat, they were captivated, their senses overwhelmed. As quickly as it had come, the light vanished, leaving behind a stark void that seemed to echo their collective gasp. The hum returned, now layered with a deeper resonance, a sound that vibrated through their bones, pulling at their very essence. "Did you see that?" Emily stammered, her eyes wide with awe and fear. "What was it?" "I don't know, but we need to find out," Jack replied, his determination ignited by the mystery unfolding around them. The allure of the unknown tugged at him like a siren's call, promising answers while shrouding them in deeper questions. As they pressed on, the field transformed into a surreal landscape. The grass beneath their feet swirled in intricate patterns, as if they were walking on a living tapestry woven by an unseen hand. Shapes began to emerge within the field, geometric formations that defied logic and reason. Circles within circles, spirals that seemed to twist and turn into infinity, each pattern perfectly arranged yet impossibly complex. The sight was mesmerizing, yet it filled them with an inexplicable dread, a sense that these patterns were not just random, but held a meaning far beyond their comprehension. The vibration intensified, now accompanied by a low, rumbling sound that felt like a warning. It echoed through the earth, resonating in their chests, and the air thickened with tension. Animals, long hidden away, began to stir in the distance, their restless movements punctuating the stillness of the night, a chorus of unease that mirrored their own rising panic. The wind picked up, carrying with it whispers that felt like fragments of conversation, words that eluded understanding, slipping through their fingers like grains of sand. "Maybe we should go back," Sarah suggested, her voice trembling. The fear was palpable, creeping into the corners of their minds, but the pull of the formation was undeniable. It beckoned them forward, an irresistible force that drowned out their instincts. "No," Jack said firmly, though uncertainty flickered in his eyes. "We can't turn back now. We have to see this through." With a deep breath, they turned toward the heart of the formation, where the vibrations were strongest. The geometric shapes loomed larger, impossibly perfect in the moonlight, as if they had been etched into the very fabric of the universe itself. The ground quivered beneath their feet, and the hum reached a crescendo, vibrating in harmony with the patterns around them. As they entered the center of the formation, a profound silence enveloped them, cutting through the chaos of the world outside. It was a silence that felt alive, brimming with anticipation and weighty with meaning. Each breath felt heavy, as if they were inhaling the very essence of the night, the air thick with the scent of earth and something else, something ancient and unknowable. In that moment, they understood that they were not merely witnesses to an extraordinary event. They were participants in a cosmic narrative that transcended their understanding. The fear that had gripped them transformed into something else entirely, a sense of reverence, a recognition that they were on the brink of a revelation. But just as hope began to blossom amidst the uncertainty, a final pulse surged through the air, sending shockwaves of energy rippling through the ground. The formation glowed faintly, a pulse of light that danced like a heartbeat, and they felt it resonate within their very souls. It was then that they realized they were not alone in their curiosity. They were part of something bigger, something that watched and waited, anticipating their next move. As they stood at the center of the formation, the world outside faded away, leaving only the hum of the universe and the whispers of the night. They were enveloped in a moment that felt both eternal and fleeting, a thin veil separating them from answers that remained just out of reach. And as the pulse quickened and the air vibrated with the promise of revelation, they could not shake the feeling that their lives would never be the same again. As the pulsating light continued to throb rhythmically, the air around them thickened with an electric tension that seemed to weave through their very beings. Time appeared to stretch and contract, each second laden with a gravity that felt both familiar and otherworldly. They exchanged glances, eyes wide, hearts drumming in sync with the cosmic cadence. Each breath they took mingled with the heavy scent of damp earth and an underlying metallic tang that hinted at something far beyond their comprehension. In that charged silence, the shadows of the towering cornstalks danced ominously, their silhouettes shifting as if animated by an invisible force. The geometric patterns surrounding them whispered secrets in a language older than time itself. They felt as if the earth had awakened, revealing sacred truths that lay hidden beneath layers of noise and distraction, a revelation that had been waiting for them to arrive, to witness, to dare to understand. Suddenly, a low rumble resonated from beneath their feet, a sound that vibrated through their bones and settled deeply within their chests. It was not the voice of the wind or the rustle of leaves. It was more profound, a deep, resonant growl that seemed to echo from the very core of the planet. Instinctively they recoiled, every nerve ending on high alert. What was this force that pulsed through the ground, a heartbeat of the earth itself? Were they intruding upon a sacred space, or had they been summoned here by something far beyond their grasp? Then, amidst the rising anxiety, a flicker of warmth enveloped them, a gentle caress that contrasted sharply with the cold night air. It was as if the very essence of the formation reached out to touch them, urging them to surrender their fears and embrace the unknown. The light intensified, illuminating the patterns carved into the earth with a brilliance that felt paradoxical, both inviting and foreboding. They were drawn deeper into the heart of the formation, an inexplicable compulsion pulling them toward the very center where the pulse of energy thrummed most intensely. As they moved closer, a sudden thought struck them. What if they were not meant to discover answers, but rather to bear witness to a question that had lingered throughout the ages? The realization sent a shiver down their spines, a cold sweat trickling down their backs as they contemplated the enormity of the unknown. The hum that filled the air began to shift, morphing into a series of tones that resonated with the very fabric of their beings. It felt as if the formation was communicating, not in words but in frequencies that vibrated against their hearts, urging them to listen. And then, just as abruptly as it had begun, the pulsating light dimmed, the vibrations receding like the tide. The silence that followed was deafening, almost suffocating, wrapping around them like a shroud. They stood frozen in place, the weight of the moment pressing heavily upon their chests. It was as if the universe was holding its breath, waiting for something, a revelation, a release, or perhaps a return to the mundane. But in that silence, a single detail caught their eye, a small glinting object half buried in the soil at the very center of the formation, illuminated by the fading glow. Heart racing, one of them stepped forward, the rest hesitating, a primal instinct urging them to retreat. The object was unlike anything they had ever seen, a smooth metallic sphere that emitted a faint hum, pulsating in rhythm with the fading light. It felt alive in their hands, warm and pulsing with a heartbeat that resonated with the earth itself. As they held it aloft, the world around them shifted once more. The geometric patterns began to shimmer, the air thickening with a palpable energy that crackled like static electricity. They felt a connection to the sphere, as if it were a key to understanding the mysteries that lay before them. Yet, as they stood there, a gnawing fear settled deep within. What if this was not a gift, but a burden? What if the answers they sought would lead them not to enlightenment, but to a deeper darkness? The last flickers of light waned, leaving them in a cloak of darkness that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat, a reminder that they were not alone. A sudden realization struck them. This was not the end, but a beginning. The sphere was a harbinger of secrets yet to be unveiled, a catalyst that would forever alter the course of their lives. They could sense it, a presence watching from the shadows, waiting for their next move. And as they stood at the epicenter of the formation, the air thick with uncertainty and the weight of the unknown pressing down upon them, they understood that they were not merely participants in a cosmic dance. They were the very thread woven into the fabric of a greater tapestry. The sensation of being observed lingered, an unsettling reminder that the mysteries of the universe were not merely to be solved, but to be experienced. With the metallic sphere cradled in their hands, they turned to face the darkness beyond the formation, their hearts pounding in unison. The night stretched infinitely before them, a vast expanse of possibilities and unanswered questions. The world they once knew faded into insignificance, replaced by a path that led into the unknown, a journey that would demand everything from them. As they stepped forward, the hum of the universe began to swell once more, a chorus of ancient voices merging with their own. The true mystery lay not in the answers they sought, but in the courage to confront the shadows that awaited them, an echo of the cosmic truth that would follow them long after the night had faded into dawn.